All right. Well, thank you everybody again for joining us today for our program. We have an all-star panel of executives that are here today to help you adapt your job search skills and tools that you'll need in this new business climate. So, in this fast-paced and engaging discussion, we will review developing your professional brand, salary negotiations and total rewards, how to answer difficult and behavioral questions, and how to navigate new cultures and mental health. So, as stated, this is definitely a jam-packed session with the tools that you need to be successful in preparing for your future career. We are going to jump right in and learn how to develop your professional brand with Erin Vial. Erin is the Talent Acquisition Manager for UPMC and a board director of the PHRA. She is certified as a senior professional in human resources from HRCI, as well as an SHRBP from HCI. She has worked in human resources and healthcare operations for more than 15 years and is passionate about education and process improvement. And throughout Erin's discussion, you will learn about how to build your professional brand, as well as we want to bring to attention a hiring event that UPMC has here on November 17th. And Erin can share a little bit more about that through her presentation. So welcome, Erin.
Thanks, Liz. Thank you so much for sharing this flyer. Everyone, if you know any veterans looking for work, this is going to be a really exciting event next Thursday, November 17th. It's at what we now call Heinz Field. I think you say at Acrisure Stadium, but I don't intend to learn. So if you know any veterans, please invite them to that event. It's really going to be a wonderful opportunity to honor them and just make them aware of opportunities with UPMC. But I am here today to talk to you about developing your own brand. And if you want to advance to the next slide, my background, I was an HR director for many years before moving into healthcare operations and now talent acquisition. So I've spent a career looking through resumes, sitting in interviews, hiring people, and just wanted to share some takeaways that I have for you as you begin or enhance your job search. So I want to talk about branding. You should all have a personal brand. So let's talk about what is a brand. So the term brand on the next slide gives us a little snapshot of what brands look like, what you might recognize. The term brand refers to a marketing and business concept that helps people identify a company, product, or individual. So this is the definition, but what's the meaning? So let's say you want a cup of coffee. Are you going to go to the gas station and get gas station coffee, or are you going to go to Starbucks and get Starbucks coffee? I would probably go to Starbucks because I know that I'm going to get a good quality product there. I know I'm going to enjoy the coffee that I get from Starbucks. Same with my computer defaults to Bing, and I always put in Google because I always have a better experience when I use Google over Bing. So this speaks to the strength of these brands. These brands have done work to convince me that I'm going to have a good experience, that I'm going to get a better result when I use them. So on the next slide is a graphic that I really like that just kind of goes into, I didn't create this graphic, I just like it. It kind of shows you sort of the work and thought that goes into the images behind a brand. But let's say for a moment you were creating a company or a product that you wanted to brand. What would you think about? What would you put into that? So the first thing you would think about is the market. For this product that I'm going to create, what are the needs of customers? Is there a market here to sell the thing that I want to sell? What is the competition? What else is there that's similar to my product that might make me more successful or less successful in trying to sell this product? And how can I advertise it? How can I gain a customer base and let my potential buyers know about this product that I'm trying to sell? These are the things that I would think about if I had a product, had a business that I was trying to brand to the outside world. So on the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to translate these things to our own personal brands. So many of you might still be in school. You might still be kind of figuring out like what direction you want to take your career into. So I encourage you to think about your brand personally the same way that you would think about branding a product. What opportunities are there in the field that you've identified? What companies have openings? And what are your 5-10-year plans? How can you think ahead about the opportunities and how you're going to align yourself to eventually get to the positions that you want to be in? competition. I think it's really important to think about other individuals that might be going for these same positions and what kind of qualifications and experience those individuals have. How are you going to set yourself apart from other people who may want the same positions that you want? And finally, advertising. And again, this is where your personal and professional brand really comes in. How are you going to connect with leaders from the companies you want to work for and let them know that you're a great fit? How do you stand out within your own organization potentially to grow and enhance your own career potential? So these are the things we're talking about when we talk about a personal brand. One thing, I think the best definition of personal brand is on the next slide. What is it that you want people to think about when they see you? This is your personal brand. So obviously you want people to think you are competent, you're professional. So how are we going to do that? Let's dive into, you know what you want, you've identified the position that you want. How are you going to get the space that you need to convince someone that you're the right person to do it? There are three things that are really important when we talk about personal branding. So if we want to go to the next slide, we have three ways that we're going to outreach to potential employers. Let's say you don't already have a position or you want to change positions and you want to leverage networks to get connections to share your brand. You have your resume, you have LinkedIn, and you have personal connections. These are the three best ways to go connect with possible positions to share your brand. So I want to start by looking at a resume example, and I just shared mine on the next slide. So a couple of things that you want to make sure are present on your resume. I'm a big fan of a summary at the top. I think expressing this is the job I'm interested in and this is why I'm interested in it really helps a recruiter find out, is this person a good fit at a glance for this position. The next thing you really want to do is make it quantifiable. I want you to think about this as you're applying for jobs. One thing that you're doing is convincing that employer to take a chance on you. Hopefully, any job you're applying for is kind of a stretch goal. Hopefully, you're not just applying for lateral positions that are similar to work you've done before. Hopefully, you're saying, hey, this is more responsibility than I've had in the past, but I can do it. I can take it on. So then your employer's kind of saying, well, how can I trust that this person's going to give me results? How can I trust that this person's going to do a great job? Find out ways to quantify your resume. Did you increase sales by 10%? Did you decrease turnover in your HR department by 15%? Even if your work experience doesn't seem relevant to the jobs you want, let's say you've worked in retail in the past and you're going for an HR role, that's okay. Lots of those skills are translatable. So find ways to quantify and share numbers that specify to your new hiring manager how you're going to make an impact on their bottom line. And finally, include everything. I think some people worry about not putting all their experience on their resume. I can share with you at UPMC that a hiring manager will not see your resume if you're not qualified. So if a job posting requires 5 years experience and you only put 3 on your resume, you'll get rejected right out of new application status. So if you worked in retail for 2 years, if you worked at the fast food restaurant, but you're worried about putting on your resume because you don't think it's relevant, that might be something to think about, how different companies treat and screen their resumes. So kind of a judgment call based on where you're applying and what you think those guidelines are. But I encourage you to put everything on your resume. So on the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about LinkedIn. This is another great way to connect with employers to show that you're a professional person who's taking this workforce seriously. I would invest in a professional headshot. You don't have to break the bank. There's always like Groupons that you can use to go get a headshot. Tell your story, make it creative, but keep it professional. Connect with people, just connect with anybody you see and ask for informational interviews. This is where you might reach out to someone and say, hey, I'm really interested in doing the kind of work that you do. Would you be willing to spend 15 minutes talking to me about your work? And kind of be prepared to develop a thick skin around that. As a recruiter, I get asked this all the time, and I'm never annoyed by this. If I have the time, I love to connect with people and say, this was my journey. This was how I got here. I love the work that I do. So I love connecting with people who want to do the same work because I just think it's the best way you can spend your time. However, I don't always have that time to talk to people. So ask, you might kind of look at a formula, like for every 20 requests you send for this, you might only get 1 response. And for every 5 responses, you might only get 1 yes, but that's okay. So use LinkedIn to connect with people. That's the purpose of LinkedIn. That's why people are there. So don't worry about irritating people by asking if you can connect with them. They don't mind, they might not respond because they're busy, but they don't mind if you ask them. Create content and start conversations. That's another good. If you want to be considered a subject matter expert, let's just say in the field of HR, let's say your dream is to go be an HR director somewhere, start those HR conversations. Hey, this is what I'm seeing in the labor force. This is what I found on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. That can be a really interesting way to sort of start to build some subject matter authority around the field that you want to eventually excel in. So get a little brave, and start creating content on LinkedIn. That can be a really good way to spend your time to really build that brand as someone who is an expert in your field. So on the next slide, though, let's just say you're still in school. Maybe you don't feel like you know that much to share, to ask for these interviews. That's okay too. There's ways to build those skills. Reading books that are relevant to your area, I am a huge fan of. I read professional leadership books all the time, and I'm always surprised by what I learn and who I'm able to connect with by other people who share that affinity for reading. Mentorship is a great way. Again, asking people if they'll mentor you. Some people love to do this if they have time, and if they don't, they're usually not frustrated that you ask them. Networking with anyone you can find is a really great way to improve your skills. Ask them industry-specific questions. Publish. If you're able to write and publish something, that can be a great way to get ahead. During the pandemic, I was working in healthcare leadership and published an article, and my company asked me to go on a radio interview, and I was interviewed on the Harrisburg NPR, which wasn't something I thought that I would do, and it really kind of aligned me for future growth because it got me some name recognition. So publishing can be a great way to get some recognition that way. And then study articles. There's lots of publications that can kind of give you that room for starting to ask the right questions and knowing where to look. And then joining a professional organization, just a plug for the PHRA, or this can be a great way to connect with others in your industry and really start to form those professional connections. So Liz, it looks like, am I at 10 minutes? Am I at time?
You're good. You
okay. I have a few more. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you. So just moving ahead, those are kind of ways that you connect before you meet someone. Okay, like how do I get these meetings? How do I connect with people? How do I start these conversations? But then once you're in those conversations, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Again, how am I being perceived? What am I contributing? How am I asking intentional questions? So I want to share with you the most recent professional book that I read on the next one, which I really loved. It's called Brief. And it's kind of the art of being really controlled and concise in your communications, which I need because I am a talker. I would talk forever. So this was really important for me to learn and study, was how to have really engaged conversations. So there's 4 steps: talk, active listening, converse. So really spending some time thinking about what it means to be actively listening and not just sort of waiting for your turn to talk and say, oh, that reminds me of something I know, and possibly letting that conversation get off course. If you're talking to a professional, whether it's in an interview, whether it's in a networking or mentoring session, that's an opportunity for you to make a connection. And you want to make sure that you don't spend it just jibber jabbering. You want to make sure that you spend that time getting intentional about what you want as a result of that conversation. So practicing your active listening skills and learning how to ask really good questions to keep the other person talking can be a great way to form those lasting connections. And then again, I have a couple of slides here about interviews that I just want to really briefly glaze over because we have so many wonderful presenters today. I don't want to take anybody else's time. But during an interview, when you get that interview, the biggest thing, I think the biggest advice that I can give you is ask questions about the role. And think about it this way. If let's say you're really skilled at something. Let's say you're a really skilled cook, okay? And somebody asks you to make a souffle. You wouldn't just be like, okay, I'm gonna go make that souffle. You would have questions about that. Like, well, wait, what kind, what fillings, what, you would have follow-up questions because you're very familiar with this kind of work and you know what to do. So if I interview somebody and they have no questions for me, kind of what my thought is like, well, you probably have no idea what you're getting into. Whereas the person who really wants the job, the person who's coming in to show me that they can make a difference and they can make an impact, has lots of follow-up questions for me. Like, and there's some at the bottom of the slide that I think are really good. What characteristics do others have that enable them to thrive? What does a career path look like in this role? If I take this job from you, what is am I just going to sit in this job for the next 5 years, or is there going to be growth available to me? And can you tell me about the culture? So questions like that really show an interviewer that you're engaged and taking the role seriously. So spend some time before an interview thinking about some questions. Oh, and then on the next slide, one last thing that I did want to share. In an interview, you want to make sure you give specific stories. Use this STAR method of situation, task, action, and result. And this can be really intimidating, especially if you're new to the workforce. And one piece of advice that I have is think of a situation that you were in where you maybe had to overcome a barrier or work together. Maybe you were working in a group and things went off track and you had to get it back on track. Think through the details of that situation and be prepared to tailor it to a whole array of questions, because you might get questions about overcoming an obstacle. You might get a question about teamwork. You might get a question about redirecting yourself when things don't go as planned. And your story can fill any of those gaps. So I think that's a really good way to go into an interview. Think of a couple of specific stories and then just be ready to pull those out based on the questions that you get. And of course, send a thank you email after an interview. This is never the decider. I don't think very often it's like, oh, we would have hired that person, but we didn't get a thank you email. However, if we already know the person we want and you get that thank you email, to me, that shows like, yes, this person's capable of professional communication. They're going to follow up with our clients, in a really similar way to the way they followed up with us. So it really gives you that level of assurance, like, yes, we picked the right person here. So always go with that thank you email. All right, thank you so much. That is the conclusion of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Erin, for providing all your insights there on how to create our professional brand. Lots to think through there. So thank you very much. And now up next, we have Jennifer Kelly. Jennifer is an MSHR, is currently a director consultant and registered representative licensed in health, life and accident plans, and serves as a representative for individuals and business securities in multiple states. Jen serves as the current volunteer vice president for the Membership Diversity and College Relations Committee at the PHRA and is an ambassador for Community Bridges Network. Jen is from Pittsburgh, and in her downtime, she enjoys time with her friends and her family, travel, music, concerts, musicals, volunteering, and helping others in sports and continuing their education. She has led HR for TMP Worldwide, Monster.com division, consolidating HR and benefits for over 15 acquisitions, and did extensive travel supporting HR in the United States as well as Canada. Jen was the Director of Career Development for Kaplan ECA for nearly 15 years and managed compliance, ADA, I-9, and supported internal benefits and human resources, and assisted with the career development books published by Kaplan. Jennifer has extensive experience in talent management, career development, and diversified progressive experience in all HR, total rewards, compliance, and this is all coupled with a bachelor's in business and a master's in human resources. She's also earned her senior professional and human resources certificate in May of 2020. So very qualified there. Welcome, Jen.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to thank the volunteers today and Liz and Catherine and Judy for doing such a great job on the back end, because none of this wouldn't happen without all of the great volunteers that we have at PHRA. And also, we appreciate all of you that joined up on the call, and we hope that you get a lot of information from our discussion today. I'm one of those people that keep things brief and moving, so I will be brief in my presentation. I did see somebody, Mara had her hand up, and I didn't know how we were addressing that.
I apologize. I did not see that.
I was applauding for our last speaker.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, great job. Yes. Okay. So how do you want to do questions at the end?
If there's a question and somebody wants to raise their hand, I'll pay attention, and if it's appropriate, I'll jump in there. But if not, we can take questions at the end.
Okay, great. Okay. So my first question to all of you is, if you got offered a job, and this is, one of your first ones out of, your professional jobs in your new field, would you want to be paid $15 or $20 an hour? That is a question that is kind of like a double-edged sword. And the answer is it depends, okay? And that's where we get into what total rewards is. Total rewards is bringing all of the things, the compensation that you get, your pay, all of the good things that you have available to you at an employer. And that's all wrapped up into total rewards. And that could be flexibility, working from home. It could be bonuses. It could be your health insurance that they pay 100% of that, which is very rare. Like some companies, they'll pay $20. You only pay $20 out of pocket for a family. And on the back end, that costs that employer a good $1,600 just to run your health benefits. So you're really making a lot of money. If they have tuition reimbursement, that's another great thing. There's so many good things that are available for new employees. So the breakdown is about 36% of your benefits are and my presentation's not moving, but I'm gonna keep moving with it. The 36% of your benefits on the back end, they are that equates to, you know, that percentage of the pie of what you're making. So if you get 64% in cash, so and the rest of that's on the back end, the employer has to spend a lot of money on the back end for taxes and to keep you and workers' compensation and so many different things. And you know, computers, service, if they pay for that, just so many a myriad of things that you would never even think about. And Catherine, are you moving to the next slide? Okay, there we go. And that's the pie. So believe it or not, about 36% is in benefits for people. And that's a lot of money, you know, when you equate that. So the next slide talks about direct compensation. So what is direct compensation? That's your hourly, your salary, the commissions, bonuses, incentive pay. And some of these employers are giving very nice incentive pays now for people to come on board. And I would take advantage of that if you can, because that we haven't seen a lot of that in the past, you know, 20 or 30 years, I would say. Unless you're in a higher level position, which, you know, I hope that you do get into that higher level position where you would get a sign-on bonus whenever you joined up with a company. And that would come later on in your career. Indirect compensation, they pay unemployment tax, social security tax, workers' comp insurance. And believe it or not, that can be very expensive depending on what the claims are on the back end. And all of you HR people should be learning about that or have learned about that. Benefits, anything that would be in your package, like your vision, your dental, your health insurance, retirement, any hybrid work arrangements, PTO. Some people have unlimited PTO. That's awesome. Employee assistance program, relocation expenses. Parking is a big thing because I just helped somebody to negotiate something for you know, their new job, and they weren't keeping in touch with how much money that parking was going to cost in downtown Pittsburgh. It's very expensive. And if you move to another state, you know, that's going to be expensive because you have relocation, and it never hurts to ask, hey, could you reimburse me for part of that? Any training, meals, some people have, you know, they give people 3 meals a day, gym memberships, and any discount programs. That some people get a company vehicle if they're in sales. We talked about computers, laptops, cell phones, and stock options are something that companies give out as well. And that's an awesome thing if you have an opportunity for that. Pension plans. I mean, there's just so many different things that a company could give out, and that would change the trajectory of whether you would take $15 an hour or $20 an hour, especially when you were getting tuition reimbursement and health insurance for yourself and your family, you know, at a minimal cost. I mean, that is worth gold. Next slide, Catherine. Thank you. Get the full picture before you look at everything. Make sure that you're looking at every detail, because if you pass up, if you say that the company offers you $45,000, and you know you have to pay $500 a month in parking, okay, and you haven't thought about that, and you get to that job, and guess what happens? You're not going to be able to make your bills. Okay, so you have to really do a nice budget and take a look at even the culture of the company, because if that culture, when you go in there, it doesn't feel right to you, that's a red flag, because that's a place where you might not enjoy your career, and you want to pick a place of employment where you're in sync with the people and the compensation. Okay. So salary negotiations, hey, is this worth my while? Absolutely. Because you can always ask for a little more. What normally happens is that there's a pay range for the position. So say that the range is $40,000 to $55,000. Okay, they can go up to 55,000, and if you were offered 42, there's room for negotiation. They're never going to give you at the top of that, that bracket. They will never give you that, a company. And most companies have, some type of, and there are different types of pay systems. And I've been with companies where they pay for performance, which, it's kind of, wishy-washy about, that grade, but they're willing to pay more for somebody that's a high performer. So how common is salary negotiation for the new grad? 62% are negotiating. So that's a pretty high number. And I would encourage all of you that you do have an education, you are learning, and you have to be able to make those bills and those payments to be successful, to give yourself a peace of mind to concentrate on that job. So I would definitely negotiate that salary, as you're going through, and say, hey, listen, I know that you have a range for the position, and I really want to take this position, but I was wondering how much more we could go up, because I realize now that I have to pay for parking $500 a month, and I'm not going to be able to make my rent if I don't, get that covered. And for a variety of other things, like even the insurance, make sure you're looking at that, because even though you get insurance, it might be $500 a pay or $500 a month. And then that's something that you haven't accounted for. You got to really take into account all these things when you're doing your salary negotiation. And you can say, you could spin it any way you like for salary negotiation, but just don't do it inappropriately at the inappropriate time. So if the employer has offered you a job, that is whenever you do that salary negotiation. Catherine, you want to go to the next one? Thank you. Start the conversation by saying something like this: I'm really excited by this new job opportunity. Being formally, accepting, I would like to discuss the base salary that you've offered me. Based on my current salary for this type of position, together with my qualifications and experience, I would be more comfortable with a salary of whatever it is, $50,000. I feel that that more accurately reflects the value I bring to the position. I'm 100% committed. And are you prepared to consider this? This is just one other example of how you can do any type of salary negotiation. You don't want to be offensive, but you want to make sure that you're getting the best for what you have. And if you look like on salary.com, it is about 10% inflated, the salaries on there, but you could use that as like a negotiating tool for an employer and say, I understand that salary.com is a little bit higher in the it shows a little higher in this area for salaries, but I'm willing to I'm willing to consider something more than what you're currently offering to me. Okay, Catherine. All right. And then this is just the quick tip on how to negotiate your salary. Make sure that you start by evaluating what you have to offer. And that's important because you do have a lot to offer. You have bright ideas, you have all the experience and things you've learned through your internships, customer service, transferable skills, so many different things. And then just your, if you fit into that culture, say, hey, listen, this is really the culture for me. Research the market average, which we talked about. Salary.com is a little bit high. Prepare your talking points. Make sure that you're prepared. Rehearse it with somebody that's trusted in your program, or a friend or family member. Be confident. Ask for more. Share job-related expenses you're incurring, just so that they know, hey, it takes me 20 miles to get to work, and that costs so much money with the gas prices. Be flexible. Don't be afraid to walk away. If it doesn't feel right, you're better off to walk away and then get something that's better for you. And you always express gratitude, because people they're sharing their time with you to try to get you set up with a position. So it's like somebody inviting you into their house. So you want to use those same rules. Okay, Catherine. Thank you. Any questions that you have? Just let me know. You can ask them now, or just put them in the quotes, or else you can take my contact information and I can get back in touch with you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Jen. Before we move on, did anybody have any questions for Jen? Not seeing anything in the chat, so we'll circle back to that here at the end. But again, thank you so much, Jen, for the insightful conversations on salary negotiations and total rewards. The verbiage in particular on how to negotiate a salary, I think will be extremely helpful for everybody here. All right, so now that we know how to develop our brand and we understand what to expect as it relates to a position's total rewards, we now need to understand how to address some of those difficult questions that might pop up through the interview. And we have Danielle Mundikas here to help us with that. Danielle relocated here from her hometown in New York City back in 2013. In addition to speaking, training, and consulting for organizations across the Northeast with regard to culture of inclusion, Danielle is also the Employee Relations and Inclusion Manager for Eckert Siemens, where she is responsible for the diversity, equity, and inclusion programming and implementation across the firm's nationwide offices. Danielle is also the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for the Pennsylvania SHRM State Council and serves as the co-chair of the Committee for Diversity and Inclusion for the Allegheny County Bar Association. So without further ado, let's welcome Danielle to the screen. Welcome, Danielle.
Hi, Liz. Thank you so much. And thank you to both Jen and Erin for their presentations earlier. Jen, I think I actually learned something in a couple of your slides. So I thought that that was really wonderfully done. And we're going to be talking, as Liz said, about behavioral-based interview questions, which is something that Erin touched on at the end of her presentation. So Liz or Catherine, I'm going to ask you to please move to the next slide. All right, so we're going to be looking at what are behavioral-based interview questions. They are questions that really determine how you act in a specific situation, right? That's what people are searching for. We're looking for a story when we talk about behavioral-based interview questions. And I sort of categorized them into these three more general categories that we see below. So we have situational, anecdotal, and personal. And a situational behavioral question is really going to ask you what should occur in a specific situation. Someone is looking for you to share your thoughts, your opinion, your story, your feelings on what should be taking place in a situation that they may outline for you. An anecdotal response is really looking for something that is a personal experience, right? So maybe that person might phrase that question to you as, what would you do in this particular situation? If I presented this problem to you, how would you solve it? Or how have you solved it, rather? They're looking for you to share something that you have done and can connect with in the situation that they're outlining. And then personal is sort of more hyperbolic, right? What would you do? So as opposed to what have you done? If I outline this for you in the context now of my culture, of my organization, what would you do? How would you handle this? What are the steps that you would outline, right? And those questions are usually the ones that are designed to throw you the most off balance. They are the ones that are designed to really kind of catch you in a situation where you have to think in a way that you might not have been able to prepare for. And that's something that we're going to talk about in a little bit. May I please have the next slide? So we're going to talk a little bit about authenticity versus the truth of what you should share, right? I think that this is something that can be a challenge for a lot of us in interview questions, particularly when we are asked things that are looking for our opinions, our thoughts on how we should handle something that is presented to us, right? So how honest should you be versus how honest can you be? And sometimes that's really going to depend on culture, right? We're talking a little bit about code switching to some extent here too, for folks in various environments. And code switching is not just related to sort of language and our ethnic background. Sometimes it's related to what we should share at work versus what aligns with how we behave when we're not in a professional environment and culture, right? So thinking through how honest we should be versus what we can be, that's really going to depend on the culture and the environment of the organization that you are having this conversation with. What if your authentic answer isn't something that you want to share, right? Someone is asking something, it can feel so natural to want to say, oh, you know, this was my experience in this situation. But as you're looking at this person, you're like, you do not want to know, you know, how long I could do whatever it is in this situation that may be relevant to the answer. So thinking through sort of situationally, what is the best answer if you can't provide what your authentic answer may be, right? And then what if you're asked a question that makes you feel uncomfortable? Can you decline to answer a question? If you are asked something that makes you feel uncomfortable, it is okay to say that you are uncomfortable. It is okay to express that discomfort and to ask for either a reframed question, clarity on the question, or to consider a different question that could achieve the same result in an answer, right? You never have to make yourself uncomfortable in an interview setting. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later on too. But what I do want you to remember is that anytime you are in an interview, especially in the year 2022 and moving forward, right? The interview is not only for the organization or the company to decide if they want to work with you, it's also for you to decide if you want to work with that company. And if folks are asking you questions in a way that makes you feel constantly uncomfortable or consistently like this isn't something that you feel super sure you want to engage in, that's a sign for you as well about whether or not you want to proceed with that organization or company or culture. So is it okay to respond to a question with a question? I would say if your question deals with clarity or one of the situations we outlined above where you want someone to restructure or to rephrase in a way where you feel like you can provide a better answer, then it's absolutely okay to respond to that question with a question. But if you are responding and your intent is to provide resolution or satisfaction to the question that you have been asked, I would not recommend responding to that question with a question. So be really intentional in your delivery and make sure that the end result of what it is you're sharing is a statement and not something that is begging for further information. Next slide, please. So when we're giving these answers in these behavioral-based interview questions, particularly when they're difficult, we want to think through what is the goal of our answer, right? We want to make sure that we are sharing information about ourselves, that we are prompting a follow-up question, and that we are creating an indirect opportunity to share, excuse me. Again, when thinking through these types of questions, it's a story. We are giving an opportunity to build information about ourselves. Interviews really leave, I should say resumes rather. The goal of a resume when you put it together is to secure an interview. And it leaves the reader wanting more, right? That's how you got there. That's your opportunity to now give them more, to now tell them more. This is the opportunity to be more, do more, show more that you couldn't on your resume. I think most folks here would share with you that when putting together a resume, we want that resume to be a page, maybe 2 max, right? There really aren't that many situations that call for more information than that. As your career develops and takes on shape, you will find that it becomes harder and harder to condense the information that you want to share into that page or 2-page format, right? So the interview is the place where you get to give that information that you wanted to include on your resume that sort of fills in some of the gaps, that really builds the story, builds the picture of who you are and what you can do, as opposed to the resume, which is just sort of the teaser to get you into the place where you can deliver that sort of content. Next slide, please. So preparing responses in advance, we want to think through what can we prepare, how can we prepare, and how do you answer authentically in the moment. Have a few stories that you are really strong in telling, right? And feel sure of the details on. Make sure that they're stories that are sort of universally applicable, that can apply across a lot of formats, and that maybe don't pigeonhole you into one specific type of culture or environment in their telling. Think about your approach. Are you more of a talker? Are you more of a listener, right? Do you prefer being part of a team? Do you prefer working as an individual? How can you best think through experiences you have that are relative to the position that you're applying for, right? Those are the types of things that you want to prepare in these stories, thinking through what kind of story am I building, and then how is it going to relate to this position? as we answer authentically in the moment, we also want to make sure that those stories are relative to the position. So let's use HR as our example career, because that is what I think most of us in this room are doing. The way that you answer questions for an HR position at a federal agency may look really different than the way that you answer HR questions at a fashion house or a magazine, for example, right? The culture in the second environment is going to be a lot more creative and a lot more fluid. So even though your duties are the same, the way that that culture operates might be different. So your room to smile, to be more expressive, right? To share different parts of yourself, how you dress for that interview might look really different. All of those tie into the behavioral interview question, to the way you're shaping your story, to the way that you're delivering your story. So to the points about preparation before, really researching the environments, researching the cultures, building your personal brand, these are all parts of sharing your answers to these behavioral interview-based questions and how you create that story, right? Ultimately, you are the thing, you are the hook in this environment. This is your chance to really build yourself up and to share that with this company in a way that you might not have another opportunity to be able to do so. We really also want to be thinking too, especially as you are moving forward in your career, about the difference between a job and a career, right? So you can be interviewing for a job, which might be a position that you're going to take right now. You're not sure if there's growth. You're not sure where it's going to lead. You're not sure if this is something that you really want to develop. Your career is sort of the track that your jobs build into, right? It's the way that you develop growth and advancement and really look about how you're going to further who you become in this professional environment. So as you're answering behavioral-based interview questions, think through that too. Is this something for you that's more of a job or that's more of a career? Because jobs are where you learn and careers are where you grow. So the way that you answer your question is going to shape sort of what that trajectory looks like to the interviewer who's talking to you as well. Next slide, please. So thank you for joining me for my section of this conversation. I hope that what I have shared has added some value to your career journey and to your job search. And I will turn it back to Liz. Look forward to talking with all of you in the future.
Thank you, Danielle, for sharing all your tips and tricks there on how to address some of those difficult questions that we are faced throughout the interviews. Next, we have Sandy Mirvash, who is going to help us navigate new cultures in mental health. Sandy Mirvash is an associate professor at Point Park University Roland School of Business and the program director for Human Resources Management. Sandy co-directs the Women in Industry Initiative at Point Park University and serves on numerous committees at the university and externally, as well as at the Pittsburgh Human Resource Association. So thank you for that too, Sandy. All right, welcome, Sandy.
Thank you, Liz. So first, I want to thank all of my co-presenters because you really, really set up this conversation for me. So thank you, because I'm not sure if you realized you were setting up my part of the conversation, but you did, and I really appreciate that. So what you heard everyone mention throughout their presentations is they all mentioned the word culture. So what I want to talk to you about is something that maybe we don't think enough about as we're looking for that new job, and especially as we're, maybe navigating that entire process. And that is corporate culture. And then to take even a deeper dive into that, let's look at mental health, specifically a little bit more about stress and anxiety. So first, what is corporate culture? So on the next slide, I'm going to sort of define for you very briefly what corporate culture is. So just to put it in easy terms, corporate culture is the way we do things around here. And corporate culture is, what is acceptable types of behaviors and actions and responses and work patterns. And every organization has its own corporate culture, just as different societies have different cultures, so do organizations. And the one thing you may not have considered when you're taking this new job or advancing along your career journey into a new job is you're going to experience some level of cultural shock. So when you first get into that new job, you are going to be very excited. You're going to find things to be very fascinated, and it's also going to be a little overwhelming. Well, once the initial fascination and excitement of being in the new position starts to wear off, you might find yourself getting a little bit frustrated. And that's because maybe we don't know the exact person to go to for an answer, or we're struggling with the technology in the new job or the processes in the new job. Well, hopefully you overcome this frustration and you eventually adjust to the new culture, and you start to feel as if you are accepted, respected, and belong. Now, if you don't hit that level of feeling accepted, respected, and belong, I'm sure all of you can sort of guess what's going to happen. You're probably going to end up separating from the organization. Belonging in an organizational culture is really an important part of your mental health, your success, your work-life balance, and your overall satisfaction with the job. So it's really important. Just as, everyone was talking about, navigating the interview and those interview questions and really taking time to understand the total rewards and making sure your personal brand is presented properly. That work-life balance and feeling as if you belong at an organization is also critical to your success. So what do we do about this? How do we navigate this organizational culture? Well, I have a couple of tips for you. Some of it you can do long before you actually join the organization. Just as Erin shared with us, it's beneficial when you're in those interviews to have questions prepared. Ask the organization about their organizational culture. What is their corporate culture like? And there's a lot of different types of corporate cultures. And unfortunately, we don't have the time today to discuss all the different types of corporate cultures. So the two terms I want you to remember is cultural fit and cultural add. Cultural fit is the type of organizational culture where they're really looking for everyone to sort of assimilate into the existing way of doing things. They're not necessarily looking for people who are going to bring creativity, innovation, and growth to the organization. So really think, where do you want to be? Do you want to be in that organization that welcomes diversity, that organization that provides the resources for you to be innovative and creative? Or do you want to be in the organization that's not going to be quite open to that level of diversity, creativity, and innovation? So it's something you want to look for. And you can ask about the organizational culture. And you can also ask how maybe they provide support and resources during their onboarding program for organizational culture. A big aspect of the onboarding process is in fact enabling an individual to really become familiar and find a sense of acceptance and belonging into the organizational process. And onboarding is not your orientation. It's not those couple of days where you fill out paperwork for the human resource department. Onboarding is that process that could last anywhere from 3 months to maybe 6 months or 9 months. Ask about the onboarding process. Ask maybe if they have onboarding buddies or mentors, because this is going to provide you with information on how dedicated the organization is to enabling you to become a true valuable member of that organizational culture. So let's move even a little bit deeper now, and let's talk about how this fit, and I hesitate to use this word fit, but how belonging in an organizational culture and other aspects of your new job could in fact impact your mental health. So the next topic I want to talk about is mental health. And you may not even think about it right now. So you're really focused on those interview questions, making sure you navigate your salary correctly and making sure you have your professional presence built properly for this new job. But there's also a lot of stress involved in starting a new position. And right now, most of you, if you're still in college or finishing college, you've just come through several very, very stressful years. And now you're going to make a major change in your life. You're going to start down that career path. It is also very stressful. The first thing you need to know is what you're feeling is normal. So on the next slide, I just have a little statement there for you that you're not alone. Almost everyone starting a new position is going to feel some type of stress or anxiety, and it's very common. So don't think that you, because you feel stress or anxiety with a new position, that there's something wrong with you. There absolutely is not. This is normal. This is common. But what you can do is you can sort of evaluate what will cause me stress and what are the resources for me to navigate that stress. So in the next slide, let's look at what are some of the causes of stress. And what you're going to realize is a lot of these things we've already talked about in today's presentation. And so Jen spent a lot of time talking about compensation and benefits. And she gave you those examples of, really negotiate that salary, really analyze the type of benefits and compensation they have. Because if you just if you don't do your homework and understand what there is being offered to you, you may find yourself in a position where you can't make your bills. If you can't pay your bills, you're going to experience stress. Is the flexibility of the organization going to cause you stress, or the lack of flexibility? You really want to find out, what do they consider a normal workload? How do they manage job security? What is their communication process? There are a lot of things that will cause you stress, and some of this you can try to navigate before you ever start the new job. Compensation and benefits, total rewards, really understanding what they offer and what's available to you is a really great first place. So what are some of the other resources? Now that we know the causes of this stress, what are some of the other resources that we can rely on? So in the next slide, we talk about some of the resources. And the one I already mentioned, and that's onboarding. The entire onboarding process is about helping you to really find your position, your balance, your belonging and acceptance within an organizational culture. The onboarding process is going to be led by the HR professional at your new company. So you can ask about the onboarding process while you're interviewing. And once you are already employed, if you've accepted the position, you can talk to your manager, and you can also always feel comfortable going to your HR department and talking to them about the onboarding process. One of the great tools that I like in an onboarding process is to have an onboarding buddy. I really like when organizations have some type of a buddy or mentoring type of program, that individual that I can go to and freely ask, like, hey, who's the person I ask about, completing a form for vacation time or PTO? Really get involved in your onboarding process. If you have questions about your onboarding process, talk to your HR manager. And then something that you should do even before you're hired is, as Jen said, find out about those benefits. What type of healthcare do they have? Your healthcare plan is most likely going to provide you with some amount of mental health benefits. So you want to know what those are and take advantage of them. A lot of people, even though their health insurance has mental health benefits, they're hesitant to take advantage of those. Don't be hesitant. As we already established when I started to speak to you, a lot of people feel stress and anxiety, and that new career job, that's major change. And you're fitting into this whole new organizational culture too. So you're trying to find out, where do I belong in this organizational culture? You've made a major change in your life. Yes, you're going to feel anxiety and stress. Take advantage of that healthcare benefit. Does your organization have an employee assistance program? Employee assistance programs offer a ton of opportunities and counseling. Even many of them offer financial counseling. So this, first real career job, and all of a sudden you've got, maybe you have college loans, you've got rent, you've got a car loan, you've got all these other bills. Maybe you need to sit down with a financial advisor. That might be something that you could actually do free of charge through your employees assistance program. Wellness programs. Wellness programs are not just about walking and taking, keeping track of steps. Wellness programs help you to navigate a lot of other areas that can help you with mitigating stress and anxiety. How much paid time off do you get? I mean, are you going to have some flexibility in your schedule? Is that something you need? And do you have a clear communication path? Do you know who you can go to and talk to if you are feeling stressed or if you're feeling anxiety? The big thing is you need to start identifying these resources before you accept the position. Know what the company is going to provide. What resources are you providing me that are going to help limit the amount of stress and anxiety I have, are going to enable me to feel as if I'm accepted and belonging in your organizational culture. And I will leave you with one really important thought on the next slide. And I did not come up with this statement, but I'm going to use it. Self-care is not selfish. And that's something I really hope that you take away from at least my part of this presentation. When you go for this new job, when you're interviewing, when you're finding out about these new companies, realize that you have to consider yourself also. Not only just through the job search process, but even when you start this new job, it's very important that you take care of yourself. And that's not being selfish, because when you take care of yourself, you're going to be a engaged and productive employee. So your employer wants you to take care of yourself. So thank you.
And thank you, Sandy. I think I know where you found that term, self-care is not selfish. I've heard that heard that through a couple of the PHRA presentations, and I think that is just an awesome term, and everybody should remember that in all aspects of life and taking care of yourself. I did see we have one question here. Oh, wait, there might be more. Go over here. I did have a question that came in regarding a guide on how long answers should be. So in your interviews, I guess, how long do you recommend that your answers should be? And Connie, who posted that question, if you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, now is the time to do so with our experts. I do see that Danielle put some comments in there, so you may have addressed it, but if anybody else wanted to chime in on that and add to it for the other students, that would be great. Any other questions from the group? All right, while we are a minute over here, I do appreciate everybody being here, and I know that the contact information was provided from all of our excellent presenters here today, so they are very personable. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to them directly. They will be glad to help. And I just want to again thank everybody for participating today in our student panel webinar. I hope that everybody found something of value here. I know I certainly did, and just want to remind all of the students here today that the future of your profession is bright, and just by showing up here today and participating in the program, you have shown us all that you have the drive necessary to thrive in your early career. So stay positive and good luck to everybody here.
Thanks, everyone. And I'm just going to add what Liz said and volunteer everyone who was a panelist today that we are all open, I think, to LinkedIn Connection. So if you need practice or you want help with that first reach out, I think any of us would be willing to sort of be that, that first reach out for all of you. So sorry for volunteering the other panelists, but I don't think I'm speaking too out of turn. Thanks again.
All right. Goodbye,
Bye, everyone.
everybody. Have a wonderful day.
And everyone will get a recording of the presentation today. And happy